So I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to talk a little bit about your book.
It took 8.5 years to make this book happen, and it explains where I come from here in Lebanon, Illinois, explains that it was a small town of 4,500 people. Well, no, 4,400 now, 3,600 back then. Explained that my high school was only 412 students. We only had one class back then. We didn't have multiple classes. So my school ran against schools from that had 4,000. But you'll understand where I came from. You'll understand what I was up against, especially most people don't know that I had a childhood urological disease that could have killed me as a youngster. And the first reconstructive surgery on my bladder and kidneys failed at the age of 5. And it wasn't until 8th grade, 8 years later, that they tried another one and that it worked. But this tells you about the very humble beginnings that I came from, and I'm not the only one. There are many champions. When people think that if you want to be a champion, you've got to have perfect circumstances and perfect resources and all that, well, that's a bunch of baloney. Okay, some of the biggest champions I know came from adversity, and they had to overcome many deficits and much discouragement to be successful. And maybe it was that struggle, Sloan, that made them champions. And in this book, you'll understand where I came from that set me up so that I could become the Peachtree Road Race champion in 79, 80, and 81. And for me, because I love cross country so much, I just regarded the Peachtree Road Race as a 10K cross country race that happened to be on streets instead of grass. Okay. You had the hills.
Yeah.
You had the turns. I just wasn't wearing spikes on grass. But you can find this book. In fact, you can get one autographed and inscribed to you by going to my website at www.craigvirgin.com. www.craigvirgin.com, and you can order a book, and it will be, you can tell me what you want, how you want it made out, and I'll be happy to do that. And while supplies last, I'm going to throw in a few other goodies as well in the mailing package so that the people can have some fun when they read the book. Okay.
And it is 100% worth reading, worth picking up. I think there's a very small cross section of like great books and great books about running. As runners, you know, we're running nerds. We breathe it, and so, you know, part of your running is the miles you're getting in, and the other is kind of just the rest of it and communing with other runners and learning about other runners. And so it definitely is up there with some of the other running books.
And Sloan, I will say this: it was a confession as well. I made mistakes, so I made many decisions in my running career because I coached myself for most of it, and I made mistakes. And the book talks about that. The book talks about my success, but it also just as much talks about my failures. And you're not a real runner if you don't have some disappointments. In fact, what the book shows is that I tell people this, I encourage this. It's hard to do, but sometimes I had my biggest successes after I had some of my biggest disappointments. There's really only two ways that you can react to disappointment. You can put your tail between your legs and crawl home and say, I'm never going to do this again. Or you can try to learn from your mistakes and learn from your judgments and say, what did I do right? What did I do wrong? And how can I prevent this from happening in the future? The only thing that I will say that does show up in the book, the biggest overriding theme that I would have to say is that we raced a lot. Sloan, back in my days of the 70s and the 80s, maybe even the early 90s, elite runners like myself, Frank Shorter, Bill Rogers, Marty LaQuarrie, we'd race heavily, maybe 9 months out of the year. And some months we'd do not just 2, but 3 races a month. And I look back on that now and I say, I could have maybe done a little bit less racing and a little bit more training, and it would have been easier on my body. But there's lessons, whether you're a high school runner or a college runner and you want to learn some lessons from me, from what I went through, or even the average runner can glean some lessons from this. So again, www www.craigvirgin.com, and you can order the book, and you can get one autographed or unautographed. You just have to indicate. Now, I don't want to close without saying that I brought along 2 special mementos from my Peachtree. The first one is the poster that Adidas made. Now, this helped get, so in '79, Peachtree was still kind of a regional race with a little bit of national flavor. But I had just won the national track championships that year in the 10,000, and then won Peachtree, and it got national news. And this picture of the finish line, that was my first year in Adidas, or Adidas, as they say in Europe. And they made this picture. They bought the rights to the picture, and they made it into a poster that thousands and thousands were distributed. But also, they made it into an ad that was on the back cover of all running magazines for like 18 months. And so not only was it promoting Adidas or Adidas or promoting me, but it was promoting Peachtree, because it says that right here. And so that ad, my victory in '79, really helped. And by '81, of course, Peachtree was getting nationwide TV coverage on WTBS. Well, there was another iconic figure back in those days with Peachtree. Unfortunately, she is now deceased, but she was a good friend of mine, and her name is Greta Waitz, W-A-I-T-Z, but in Scandinavia, they call her Greta Weitz. And one of my most prized possessions is 2 pictures. This is her autograph card, and she signed it to me, and that's her running at Peachtree. And I can't remember what year that it was, but she was running in Peachtree, and she signed this autograph card for me. So for those 2 or 3 years, we were Mr. and Mrs. Adidas in America, because we were winning the World Cross Country Championships. We were winning major road races. I just didn't win the Boston the way that she did. And but it was a fun moment. But I want people in Atlanta to know that Peachtree will always be special. Atlanta will always be special. Those 10 years created a bond between Craig Virgin and Atlanta, Georgia, the whole region down there, and the race and the running community. It's just some of the friendliest running community that you will ever meet. And believe me, I've been coast to coast. And when I say that from a position of authority. Running is a great sport, many good people, but it doesn't get any better than the running community in Atlanta. And I'm very proud to have been there. I'm proud to have been a part of it, and I'm proud to have helped it grow. And I hope to get back down there at Peachtree this Thanksgiving, if nothing else, in 2021, okay?
Thanks, Craig. It's always a pleasure talking to you. It's not every day that we get to listen to someone with your running credentials. So thank you so much for taking the time.
Well, thank you for your patience. There's been a lot of storytelling, but hopefully you can cut it down to people can find something interesting, okay?
For sure. Thanks, Craig.
You're very welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye.